Alright, we have our household chemicals in test tubes in front of you down here that you can see, and our first test we're going to do is a solubility test. So I'm going to add some DI water to each one of these that I've already pre-filled with a sample. It's about a pea-sized sample off our scoopula that I've added to each one, and I'm just adding DI water to them now. And we're checking for solubility in water. So something that's fairly soluble will count as soluble for this particular set of tests. So from the very first one that I'm going to do, this is calcium carbonate. And what you should see there is it's pretty cloudy, and we're going to leave it set. This one is calcium sulfate, and if you look at the chips down there at the bottom, they're not doing very much in the water. The third one we have is starch, also cloudy and not dissolving real well. The next one that we have is sodium chloride. That appears to be dissolving. The next one that we have is going to be sucrose, and that also appears to be dissolving. A little bit too much sucrose in the bottom, but it is dissolving. The next one we have is sodium bicarbonate, and the same thing with it. It's dissolving. And sodium carbonate when I shake that up. And the very last one is fructose. So if I get a little bit too much sample in there, it's not going to dissolve with the amount of water I'm using. So what we're looking for is cloudy or no change in the solid that was put into it. So out of those, the very first one appears not to be soluble, and that would be calcium carbonate. The second one, you can still see our solid little chunks down there. They haven't done a whole lot of anything. It's not very soluble, and that is calcium sulfate. And our starch, same situation, not dissolving. So everything else appears to be soluble. So if you looked at them, they're fairly clear. There is a little bit in the bottom where I put too much sample in, but for the most part, I would say those are soluble. So soluble products would be sodium carbonate, sodium chloride, the sucrose, sodium bicarbonate, sodium carbonate, and fructose. So those would be our soluble and insoluble ones. That's our soluble, insoluble test. So to speed us up a little bit, we will take a look at, I will put some fructose, sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, sucrose, and sodium chloride into a new set of test tubes down there. And we will test those next, the soluble ones, with a vinegar test and see how that comes out. Now the vinegar, remember, is acetic acid. Acetic acid should give us bubbles if it is a carbonate. So there's fructose, no bubbles. So we'll set him back. Holy smokes, look at that one go. We got bubbles. That is sodium carbonate. So I'm going to put him over here because he bubbled. And guess what? Sodium bicarbonate also bubbling. So that's an indication of CO2. And we're adding some to our sucrose, which does absolutely nothing. And we're adding some to our sodium chloride. That's interesting. That bubbles. That gives us a positive test. So we will put that over there. And guess what? I put the one over there that does that for a reason. So I'm going to pull him back out, and I want to show you something. This is sodium chloride, sodium carbonate. So it does have a carbonate mixed in with it. It is something we shouldn't be using. So I'm going to pull that out, set him over there for a minute. And we're going to put some sodium chloride in a fresh test tube. That is just sodium chloride. And you can see our little chunks of salt there. We'll drop them in. And let's back off on this one for a minute. You should know that sodium chloride is soluble in water. Even though it was a carbonate chloride combination that we did before. Now, yeah, keep your finger on there when you shake it up. And now we see no bubbles. That is a better test. So this is sodium chloride with vinegar, no bubbles. Alright, we're going to put everything back. Then we're going to flip this around. The two that did bubbles, sodium, which ones did bubbles? Did we do those? No, probably not. Those are non-solubles. Okay. So flip this around the other way. And the ones that were tested positive, which two tested positive? The sodium bicarbonate and the sodium carbonate. Sodium bicarbonate and sodium carbonate. So keep those for positive. Those that are for bubbles, and these did not give us any bubbles, and we're going to stop there for